All right. Hello, Latinos in Clinical Research. Hola, hola. I'm here, Monica, Judy, and we have Cindy Maroquin, correct? Or Mayorquin?
Mayorquin.
Okay,
Mayorkin.
there you go. Just want to
That's
make
always a
sure we're
confusion.
getting. Yes, of course. But no, hey, so thank you so much for being here today, Cindy. We really appreciate it. One of our other co-founders, Dan, had met you, and he immediately called me and said, "Oh, we really need to get her on LICR." Just want to talk a bit about your background. So, no, you are a CRA, and would very much love for you to go ahead and give yourself an introduction to everybody watching.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for inviting me and thank you for having this forum. It's amazing that you're kind of promoting diversity in clinical trials, which I really appreciate. And about me, so as you said, my actual name is Cindy Loreli Mayorquin Cardenas, but I am aware that that's a very long name, especially if you work in an English environment. So I have shortened it to Cindy Mayorquin to make it easier for everyone to pronounce. And I do always get that confusion between Mallorquin, Mallorquin. So yeah, no bothers about that. So I've been a CRA for over 5 years now, slightly almost 6 years actually. But I have been working within the pharmaceutical companies and the CRO businesses for over 7 years. And I'm currently living in Australia thanks to this amazing opportunity that the company I'm working for has given me. But I'm going back to the UK soon and I will continue my career where I left it there. Like many others, it sounds like a cliche, but like many others, I fell into clinical research just by accident. I remember I was working at this company as an R&D coordinator or a new development product coordinator, and I had to get some funds from the government so we could fund our entire development. It was a combination molecule, I remember, and I was working with this doctor because I had to kind of get the entire development plan all the way to phase 1 or all the way to proof of concept, and I had no idea of clinical research. So this doctor was partnering with us and she was helping us with all the clinical part of the development, and she taught me about clinical research. She told me about the CRA role. She used to tell me all the time, "You'd be a great CRA," and I was like just ignoring her because I had no idea what the CRA was. And she kind of informally trained me. She showed me about GCPs, about like how to conduct clinical research, how to design clinical research protocols, just slightly. And I actually fell in love with the role and with clinical research as a field. So that's how I went and applied for my first job as a CRA and got myself an interview, and then eventually got myself a job. A bit of an untypical career pathway, if you ask me, because I never went to the CTA, CRC, research assistant roles. I just went directly into the CRA role. And I started working at this biopharmaceutical company, and we were such a tiny team. And you can imagine with that, a lot of room for improvement, and of course, a lot of things to learn, really. We basically set up the entire department because it was just starting. The biopharmaceutical part of it is a big company in Mexico, but the reality is biopharmaceuticals itself was just starting as a department. So yeah, I was able to not only learn about how to monitor clinical trials, but I was involved in the entire clinical development of new products and products that were already in development. So I had the opportunity to design protocols. I had to study biostatistics, go back to school because I was estimating the sample sizes of the protocols we were designing. I was participating in also the assessing the feasibility, economical, technical, scientific feasibility of the products that we're about to enter the pipeline, and creating templates for like to streamline processes, including SOPs, including templates for monitoring, templates for the protocol design, a lot of things really. We really created an entire department altogether. Anyway, after working for this company for over 3 years, I think I I thought that I needed to kind of pursue a master's, and I only I knew two things. The first one, because I didn't speak English, I wanted an English speaking country, so it had to be abroad. And the second one is that I didn't want to study a master's in clinical research. And as much fun as I was having in clinical research, I wanted to know if there was any other stage of the biopharmaceutical development that I was potentially good at and that I could kind of have a career in. Basically, I wanted to know if clinical research was actually for me or if I was missing out somewhere else. So I started a whole year researching about how to get to the UK, Australia, or the US. How to get a scholarship because I didn't have the money to fund my master's to start with, and then researching about the master's or potential master that I could go to, and I found this one in the University of Leeds that is called Biopharmaceutical Development, and it was absolutely what I was looking for because it not only had a stage or a module per each of the stages of clinical biopharmaceutical development, but the last one was an entire model for clinical development. So I was like, woohoo, I just found what I was looking for. So yeah, I applied for it, went through the interview processes. I got myself a scholarship from the Mexican government. And I went there in the middle of a pandemic without speaking one word of English. And my
Wow.
only reference was that everyone was going to speak like Harry Potter. And it wasn't like that. My first teacher was an Irish guy. I still don't know what he said on that first lesson. So yeah, it was kind of a challenge, but I was looking for that challenge. And I soon realized I just love clinical research. That's the place where I'm supposed to be because my entire master's I was just waiting for the last module that was the clinical research part. Anyway, so that during that time I was awarded with the drug development proposal project or award. This was a project in collaboration with Covens, now LabCorp, I think. So that's how I got my first interview before I graduated. I later rejected it for another reason. But then that kind of opened my mind to I actually can stay in the UK. I can keep practicing English. I can learn about new regulations. That was a big thing for me. So yeah, I started applying for different jobs. I applied for 5 different jobs and I got a job proposal in each of them. So I was very excited. Like I can't believe with my limited English, I'm already getting proposals and everything. So at the end, I decided to go to with the company I'm working for, and I've been working ever after, at least until my sabbatical. So yeah, and then during my sabbatical, well, I'm trying to enjoy life as much as I can. But the reality, and people that know me will confirm this, I just can't stay still. So I have been thinking on this project for a long time about creating a course for like entry level in clinical research, especially for Spanish speakers, because that's the challenge I went through. Like a lot of the information is in English, and while I do recommend people that want to work in clinical research to learn English, the reality is that you can do both. You can do it simultaneously. Learn about clinical research, prepare yourself while you are preparing yourself in the language matter as well. So yeah, I'm working on this project with a friend, kind of designing the course itself. And in the meantime, we found this company that has trusted us and wants to collaborate with us. So that's great because they can help us with all the marketing and everything. So that's what I'm working on, working very hard and hoping that the course is ready for next year. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, wow.
That's
Lots to take
that's
in. Oh my gosh, but
exciting.
really great
Yeah.
story.
Cindy,
Really, really great.
where are you? Where are you in
Yeah,
Australia?
amazing.
I'm in Sydney, so I'm traveling around for a year. It's in November, sadly. But yeah, I started up in Cairns, and I've reached Sydney so far, and the idea is that we reach Melbourne by the end of the year, or yeah,
Oh,
before November.
nice.
Wow.
I
Yeah,
I used to live there, and I did similar. I went all over.
it's amazing, right?
Yeah,
Such
yeah,
a
I
great
love it.
place to
Yeah,
live.
very nice for work, for living, for everything. Yeah, amazing place.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you started in Mexico, yes, and then you went to UK and then Australia.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow, that's such an interesting. I mean, now you know three different markets.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was working in Mexico, as I said, it was just amazing to work in such a small company because I was also working with some projects in the US. So I had kind of to learn the regulations both from COFEPRIS, which is a regulatory entity in Mexico, but also the FDA, and I knew that the GMA one was the one I was missing. So it was amazing that I had the opportunity to start all over again in the UK and learn from it. Because the other thing is that I didn't mention, but in the UK, I not only do monitoring in the UK, but also the European countries. So it has been an amazing experience for me.
And if you were going to to compare the difference on in regulations on the countries, is very different or is essentially similar?
It's very different. If I compare the states with Europe, there are some similarities. At the end, they're both part of the ICH. Sorry, so
Mhm.
there are similarities. It's just the processes are slightly different. But if I compare these two entities with Mexico, there is a big difference there. We are way behind. It really hurts to say it, but I knew it when I was working in Mexico, and I know it now that I'm working closer to these colleagues to develop the course and everything. We're still a bit behind. We are working on improving, especially times, like in the UK, they've been conducting trials for a long time, right? They know how it works. They know how where they can shorten processes. In Mexico, we just started. Even the protocol approval, it could take up to 250 days when I was working there. That's a long time. People don't want their protocols to wait 250 days to be approved. They're not going to want to conduct clinical trials in Mexico, right? So they shorten this process now, or this time now. But I think that's the main difference. Like, we do need to start shortening process so that people look at us as a place where we can conduct clinical trials in.
Oh, very interesting. Now, in essence, I love this how can I say multi-dimension dimensional or the difference on the countries, because obviously we know that everything has or it should be following the ICH, right? The harmonization for everything, so that way we have more um better guidelines and more control on what's going on. Um, but now, if you were going to say what's the difference, or if it's similar in essence, the process of clinical research in between the countries.
Approval times is one. We do follow. So basically, I will explain this very briefly, and I'm not an expert, but this is my opinion and what I understand from what I've been reading. So Mexico wasn't part of the ICH. I'm sure you know this. It started, now it's incorporating as a member of the ICH. So as not being a member of the ICH before, not even an observer, that's the thing. We just weren't part of it. We follow the CIOMS, that is a guideline based on the GCPs, Nuremberg Code, all these ethic codes, and these it kind of cover the Pan Americans. It's like a GCPs. However, the GCP part wasn't mandatory in Mexico. From the last years, we are now becoming part of the ICH, or a member of the ICH, and with that comes a lot of projects of incorporating the ICH guidelines into our processes, which is great. So one that is still in process of being incorporating is the ICH GCPs. And we already have a project of, we call it Norma Oficial Mexicana. We have a project of that one that was released this year in April, if I'm not wrong. So saying that, it doesn't mean that it's an exact copy of the GCPs. It's just it's based on the GCPs, and considering some important aspects of course, of an undeveloped country. So that's from one side. And on the other side, based on the processes that you ask, the main difference that I found, because at the end we do work very similar, is just the timelines. We just have longer timelines. You, for example, as a sponsor, you have to wait longer timelines for your protocol to be reviewed, to be approved. If you go to in Mexico, we have a lot of biosimilar development. When you go to present all the evidence that you have from your biosimilar, it just used to take a long time for it to be approved, even though you had all the information, if that makes sense. So
Okay,
that's the
got
biggest
it.
difference for
Yeah.
me, just the time of
And
waiting.
and
Yeah.
and when it comes to the actual trials, like when the sites are doing the trials, the process is similar in essence. Like they have to complete the regulatory, they have to do all the, obviously follow the protocol, get the monitor to go and review all the processes once the site gets activated and gets patients in the studies. Is that that process is the same, or is
Fortunately,
different?
fortunately, it's the same. It's the same everywhere I work, which is good. For a CRA, you don't have to learn kind of different stuff. It's basically the same. Yeah.
Very, very good. Very good. Wow, this is mind blowing. It makes me think about all the activities, I mean, around the world about research. Um, that now that we're talking, basically the world became much more smaller because just yourself in three in different or in the I mean with three different areas of the world, because I mean obviously Mexico and then UK is in between the European countries. I'm assuming is very similar in essence, and then Australia.
Yeah,
That's
it's very
such a
similar as
very
well
interesting
within.
part.
Yeah, within the UK, I was actually worried because when I first started, I think I had already 1 year working in the UK. The Brexit kind of started having a bigger structure, and that affected as well the way we were conducting clinical research. Not conducted, but the way the protocols were approved. So before the UK was part of the EMA basically, and now it's kind of separated. So we have the EMA on one side for all the European countries, but then we have the MHRA now that approves the protocols for the UK. So that was a bit of a change, but it's basically the same as well.
What I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna put you this spot, but what EMA stands for?
Medical Research Health Agency, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, okay,
So it's
okay.
basically now the regulatory entity that approves the protocols in the UK is no longer directly. So we have a standardized pathway for all the other European countries, whereas you're in France or Germany, you can uh, kind of submit the protocol to one entity,
Mhm.
whereas the UK now has its individual regulatory agency to submit the protocol to, because we
Mhm.
are no longer part of the same political area,
Sphere.
to call it how somehow.
Sphere,
Yeah,
yeah. And that's why Monica, I mean, I guess for those that are watching, also why I think it's also it's part of not necessarily an issue, but it's difficult when you involve Latin America and all that stuff because they need to do processing very quickly. And if you're not super familiar or well acquainted with the regulatories in these different countries, um, the process can be different and it can hold up or it can speed up a trial depending on who you're working with. So yeah,
absolutely.
global
Yeah,
trials are very different.
I wanted to ask something. Have now that you're working in different countries, have you seen this being a trend of people working in different countries for a different organization in another country?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And we have like niche, like some people would work. I don't know. For example, CTAs would come from a country because it's a totally remote role, and then you have people from IT that only comes from India. Like there is kind of selected countries for specific roles, but yeah, there is a massive shift towards choosing people that works remotely somewhere else. I think it's just cheaper to have professionals working in a non-developed country, for example. In the
Yeah, I
UK, it's a
have
bit
seen.
more
Hmm.
difficult, maybe to have someone remotely because there's such a massive time difference. But yeah, for example, the states that my understanding now is that they are contracting a lot of people that are still living in Mexico just because I guess it's cheaper for them to have people in a non-developed country in comparison to paying for someone working in the states. But there's definitely a massive shift towards contracting people somewhere else.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Again, like I say, the world every day becomes smaller and smaller in that regards, because now we have the opportunity to have jobs in different countries that probably in some
Make you
point you
nomad.
didn't even exactly you didn't even you. it was not even in your wild dreams, right? Unless obviously if you speak the language, I mean, it makes it easier. But to my understanding, in research, everything is managed in English, according to what I hear from other people that work in different countries. And that makes it easier, right? Because I mean, the
Absolutely.
majority of many people nowadays speak more English than any other language.
So saying that you've traveled around, you're in Australia and you're UK. I mean, obviously, you've seen. I mean, I know you're remote, but I'm sure in different aspects, especially if you helped grow a company or a division or a department in your particular company. Are you like going into the diversity space? Are you seeing shifts in conversation, depending on where you're at as far as maybe not so much doesn't necessarily mean it has to be about hiring more diverse people, but just as in focus of the research itself. And if you have, do you see it trending more towards specific areas of the country of the world?
There is more diversity, 100%. Just to put you a bit in context, my team back in the UK, um, there was one British person. The rest of us were from other parts of the world. My manager, she's from France. Um, there was this girl from Greece, this girl from Africa. So we are very diverse. And the best part is like my entire team, we were women as well. So that was actually one thing that I loved about working with this team in particular, that we just had a lot of knowledge from different places, and we could apply it in the whatever project we were working in, and that was amazing. And it's not the first time that I've seen my previous team before I moved to this company. We were very diverse as well. My manager at that time was a British person too, but the rest of the team was also from all over the place, which is amazing actually. Because when I first started and I didn't speak English very well, I thought I'm never gonna get any further, any far, because I can't speak the language of the field. Like everyone, everything I was reading, everything I was using to prepare processes from the company I was working for, everything was in English. So I thought, I don't know, I thought I was never going to learn English, and I thought I'm never going to get far. But the reality is that you have like such a diverse number of accents, different backgrounds, and everyone seems to communicate very well. It doesn't matter if you don't speak English very well, if there's an accent there, there's always a way of communicating and conducting clinical research in diversity. And I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely something that is it's been around more particular, highly spoken about since COVID, and it's making its way into making actual ripples in the industry finally, right? On our end, we've heard a lot of talk, but not as much implementation, and now we're finally seeing those movements happen. And so it's also great to hear that somebody like you're diverse background, but you're also on the other side of the country, I mean, of the world, and you're still seeing it as well. And so that's really great to hear. But in as far as activities, I mean, of course, you can't speak in detail, right? But as far as activities and studies and your experience in studies, are you hearing that talk as well on that side of the world as far as bringing in more particular patients or subjects? That have diverse backgrounds? Are you hearing that conversation being spoken about more often?
It is a conversation that has kind of risen up in the last maybe 2 3 years.
Mm.
However, in my opinion, and this is my very personal opinion, in the UK there is room for improvement, 100%. um, I don't want to get into political
For
or
sure.
economical stuff, yeah, but there is a lot of room for improvement. It's nice to hear that now, kind of, at least in the last company I was working for, we are speaking in meetings about how can we improve inclusion of patients from a different country, especially in such a diverse country. Um, but there is still room for improvement. That's what I can say.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have, well, Judy and I have questions about the job environment right now. So, how do you see the job environment in UK and also in Australia right now for the research industry?
Mm, let me think about that. It's an interesting question.
Do you still see it growing, or is being steady, or is not really moving that much I mean, have you seen people getting hired, getting laid off, or what's how does the market looks like right now?
It does feel like I feel after COVID, it people are more aware of what a clinical trial is, and there's a bit more general awareness in the topic. However, I do feel like there's a bit of a delay, let's say it, in contracting new people. Like I feel like we are the same people moving from one company to the other one rather than new company joining the field.
Hmm.
And that's exactly one of the reasons of why my friend and I started speaking about creating a course. We thought, is it the language barrier? Is there a language limitation there that we can kind of help with? But there's definitely, and I don't know what it is really, but there's definitely a kind of a block right now. There's not much contracting going on. Yeah, I think that's
Okay,
another.
I
so
agree.
Sorry.
okay, how about then your responsibilities or your job had you become busier? Like have you been assigned more work than you were assigned before?
So not really, and actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. I'm sure it doesn't have any. They won't have any problems. But we were laid off. Not laid off. Recently, I spoke with my manager. I think a month ago. So that we had an agreement within the CRO icon I work for, and the company we were working directly under an FSP model. So they decided not to work with us directly anymore. So that means for the rest of the CRAs, including myself, that are working on that particular project, we have to be reassigned to a project. So that was a big surprise because I thought everything was running very smoothly. And the
Hmm.
thing is, and I don't know if you guys see this as well, in the CRO world, you can be laid off quite often. It's not the first time that has happened to me. It's just the way the agreements work. It's a money
Hmm.
situation really. The thing when you work under the FSP model is that the company or the sponsor you're working for, they can just say, sorry, we're paying you too much, we're just going to go with a different CRO, and then
Hmm.
the entire team loses their job. Not loses their job, because at the end when you work for a CRO, you have Icon or PPD or Thermo Fisher behind you, kind of assigning you to new projects.
Hmm.
At least in my case, as I said, I just love my manager. She's a great person, a great leader. Um, what she does is that she asks us, what do you want to transition into now? She even asked me about if I feel comfortable to transition into a management position now. I do want to stick a bit around as a CRA a bit longer, but she does consider what kind of projects, therapeutic areas, or sponsors you want to work for. But yeah, going back to your question, there is definitely that kind of cycle of being laid off and then being reassigned because the sponsors kind of want to go with a different CRO or with a different department within the same CRO. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, and then
Oh,
I think that
interesting.
it goes hand in hand with, I mean, even in conversations that Dan's had, where, sponsors are taking a lot more work in-house as of late, or
Yeah,
transitioning back and forth, and, you have CROs that are, competing pretty heavily, much more heavily now, I think.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a definitely interesting dynamic that's been happening. I mean, it's ever since I've gotten in the industry. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean,
And
that's
I think going back to both of your questions as well is something that I've seen, and you just mentioned a keyword, is the competition. There's a lot of
Mhm.
competition right now. It's just very hard to get into the field. As I said when we started the webinar, I just went directly into the CRA world. Either I was lucky or I had some skills that they saw on me, but I just went directly into it. Whereas now you have all these roles, entry level roles that you need to get through before you actually get a job as a CRA or a
Mhm.
manager or something else more kind of specialized role, which is a shame because there's a lot of people out there with excellent skills, with excellent knowledge, but they just can't kind of break into that barrier.
Yeah.
And in Mexico in particular, we do have a lot of very heavy requirements in order for you to become a clinical research professional. Something that kind of blew my mind, if I'm honest with you, is when I moved to the UK, I had colleagues that weren't or didn't have a career in life sciences. So
Mm-hmm.
that for me was like, wait, are you telling me you're a finance manager, or you used to be a finance manager? And that's crazy, because the reality is that these people can also do the CRA job very well. In
Mm-hmm.
particular, I'm thinking of one person. She was probably the most experienced oncology CRA I've ever met, and she was a finance manager before getting a CRA job. Similar to me, she never was a CTA or a CRC or any other entry level role. She went directly into the CRA role. Whereas now it's just almost impossible to get a CRA role directly.
Mm-hmm.
Especially again in Mexico. In Mexico, you do have to have a very
Undergraduate
health
kind of.
related,
Yes.
yeah, kind of background. So yeah, it is
Yeah,
very
is
a
the
very
uh,
competitive market.
yeah, I think in Latin America in general is the same scenario. Colombia is the same, now the scenarios in UK, in Australia and United States are very similar too. That
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to necessarily have a background in science to be part of the industry.
Yeah.
I think what happened during the COVID is that many people start applying for jobs, and because there was a need back then, they start
Yeah.
accepting many people,
Mm-hmm.
but they were not everybody was able to reach that level of expertise or
Mm-hmm.
understanding, because it's a complex role. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has the same drive to learn, like for example yourself or the person that you mentioned, and therefore not many people provide the service or provide a good monitoring skills,
Mm-hmm.
and so that the industry got affected by that, and now they became much more stricter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
um, so I think that's the scenario that happened back then because of the vaccines and everything. It was a huge need of having monitors here, there, and it was a shortage, and it always have been a shortage of people working in research.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just that now we have been having, obviously, I mean, the market right now is kind of strange, but I
Mhm.
think the industry is still robust.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of looking in the right place, right?
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you apply to jobs in UK and this, and I would really like for you to share a little bit of maybe tips for people that are looking to apply for jobs overseas, even for people in Latin America that have a lot of experience, knowledge, and expertise, and they have interest on applying on jobs overseas, like in Europe or UK or Australia. What is something that you did that help you to be, I mean, to gain or to access those jobs?
I might consider myself an excellent person to answer that question, actually, because part of that
Oh, I
award I
love that.
mentioned,
So the
part
perfect
of that
question.
award, yeah, part of that award I mentioned that I was awarded with in the university was that that was such an amazing perk. They they had an entire team in the Uni of Leeds that helps you with interviewing and applying to job processes. So when I won that award and they got me that interview in LabCorp, they prepared me entirely from toe to head on how to apply to jobs in the UK, what works in the UK, and they even conducted some mock interviews. Pretending to be clinical research recruiters speaking to me. So it was an amazing opportunity. First thing they told me is that um, back then LinkedIn wasn't as amazing as it is or as big as it is right now.
Yeah.
So the first thing they told me is you have to update your LinkedIn. You have to tell people, or you have to let people know that you are looking for this role. So you have to specifically say in the LinkedIn, I'm looking to transition into the CRA role, or I'm looking to transition into the CRC role, whatever the role you are wanting to transition in is. So update that, the typical information, put a picture, put a description of yourself, update your information about the experience you might have. The second thing is put a lot of effort, even more important than your CV, put a lot of effort in your cover letter. So I don't know about you guys. I don't know in other Latin American countries, but in Mexico, the cover letter is not a thing. So I was very confused when they told me I had to submit a cover letter because I didn't even know what it was.
Mhm.
So basically, my best advice would be pick a couple of things that you are really good at and things that have worked in the previous work or internship or in university, kind of things that you've been successful at, and put that in your cover letter and kind of tell a story about yourself, about those two achievements, how you got there, what skills got you there, basically, even if it's only one award or one achievement that you have, kind of decorate that achievement in order for people to know that, um, at least that you have that kind of will to make that one achievement stick out. And that's the other thing. And then the third thing is focus on things that maybe not responsibilities or direct experience that you might have, but do focus on soft skills. So in the UK, and I know in other European countries, it's so important that you have soft skills like time management and that you actually demonstrate them. So, for example, let's say I didn't have any experience back in Mexico. I was recently graduated. They told me you have to focus on what are you good at. So I am aware that I'm super good at time management, and I know a lot of people say that, but it's not true. Not everyone is good at time management. Um, Show that, put that in your cover letter. I'm good at time management because I love traveling. I travel 5 times per year. If you don't have experience, for example, 5 times per year, I have an Excel for each of my travels. I include from point A to point B. Do demonstrate that you actually are good at time management. So yeah, I think those are the main things. Soft skills are such an amazing thing that the UK taught me, because back in Mexico, you have to have the experience. You have to kind of always talk about what you can do, like physically, what you can actually do.
Mhm.
Whereas in the UK, they value more soft skills that can be transferred into whatever role you're going to be developing or working
Mhm.
in. Um, to the point that they value if you, I had to change entirely the structure of my CV, because they even value if you have volunteered. So if you volunteered, for example, I love dogs, I love animals, I rescued loads of dogs from the streets. That was what my first interview, I remember she said when I spoke with the manager of the team, the reason why I liked your CV is because you love dogs and I love dogs, and that's why I gave you the opportunity. So do mention those important, because at the
Mhm.
end, something that really doesn't resonate with me in clinical research is that it's getting better. It's that there's a taboo about talking about personal life. You
Yeah.
have to be straight and very professional. You can't have the pillow here. And you always have to kind of demonstrate that I just focus on clinical research. I don't
Mhm.
have a personal life. And the reality is that as passionate as I am, I have other interests, and I'm sure you guys
Mhm.
have other interests. So it is very valuable that you mentioned that. Probably you run marathons, and the person that is going to contract you also runs marathons. So of course you want to, more than working with a professional, you want to work with a person, and you want
Connect.
to know that it's going to be a, because you can be super smart, you can have 15 years working in clinical research, but if you're not a people person, if you don't collaborate, if you don't have that attitude of teamwork, nobody's going to want to work with you.
Mhm.
So demonstrate that you're a human more than a professional. That's my biggest advice, I'd say.
I could not agree
100%.
more, because the soft
Yeah.
skills or those personal interests oftentimes become much more bigger and more important.
More prominent.
I mean, like the experience and the knowledge can always be built, but the
Absolutely.
soft skills are much more difficult. And having those soft skills make you a better professional, like teamwork. For working with a team, or even those little details, like both of us like dogs, both of us are pro animal, whatever, right?
Mhm.
That instantly have a connection and empathy between us, and that can make us work better just because of that, because we have that
Absolutely.
connection. So now that you mentioned the cover letter, I think I wonder how that will work in United States. I'm sure it will
Well,
be
they do
it
work.
will show exactly same results. Yeah, I was
Yes.
gonna say
So
that.
let's definitely
So
do that too. Cover letters are
yeah,
a huge, huge
yeah,
proponent for sure, but most
yeah,
people don't use it here either. I think the ones that do use it, or at least, it's more fluid in the understanding, I would say, is
yeah.
people with their
Hmm.
masters or PhDs, but because they're also providing like journals that they've been a part of publications, so they're used to reviewing or creating additional documentations outside of the CV. But
Mm.
yeah, it's definitely something that people need to talk
Well,
about more often. Yeah. And I will say
yeah.
what you had mentioned about Mexico, right? And I'm sure it's not just Mexico, but you know, uh, it comes down to, this is why we created LICR, because just these general conversations, right? It's giving resources to people, or at least knowledge and understanding of how to reach out to these other resources that are out there, and understanding how things are outside of, their area. Like, we didn't know much about certain things about UK and Australia. You mentioned that, and you even mentioned a few things about Mexico that, I knew some, but I think Monica mentioned she didn't know. So this is the whole point and the basis of why we have these, webinars, because we've had so many individuals from Mexico. I mean, this week we had, I think, two or three conversations with individuals that were from Mexico, about research and things of how they can move forward. And a lot of it is, they need to find individuals that have further knowledge, right? And
Hmm.
this is a platform that we use that for, because it's a great way for people to connect. And even if they're not, verbally speaking or on camera, etc., they can reach out. They'll know to reach you. So, for example, when you finish, here, we'll make sure on the YouTube and on the page that there's a way to reach to you on LinkedIn so that they can connect, right? So, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's very
Absolutely.
interesting.
yeah.
And while
I
I have
love.
a voice in this forum, sorry, another thing that I do want to recommend, because I just read that question about if someone who's listening is interested in exploring job opportunities overseas. The other thing for all those that are not English speakers, the other thing I want to say is be very patient. I've never told this story to, or I haven't told this story to many people, but I'm going to give you an example of how bad my English was. It's quite lame, a very sad story. But when I started doing the masters, we started online because it was during the COVID pandemics. And when you just start something and you have to introduce yourself and kind of, yeah, talk about yourself with the rest of your team, class, and everything, classmates, sorry. I used to close my microphone and type in the chat, sorry, my microphone is not working. But the reality was that it was working. I was so scared, so afraid of speaking English. And the same happened with my interviews. My biggest concern or my biggest barrier was myself, thinking I'm not good enough because I don't speak English. And people are gonna, it doesn't matter, I already have experience. It doesn't matter, I have a PhD, a master's, whatever degree you have. I'm not enough because I can't speak English. And I can't speak the language of clinical research. So just practice, 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 work with a friend, put yourself there, study the interview. That's another advice. Go through typical questions that clinical research professionals are asking for interviews, and practice, practice. Be very patient with yourself. I'm sure you'll master the interview process, but do practice and don't be aware of the accent kind of situation. Like, people are gonna understand something that I've learned, going back to the diversity kind of topic we were talking about earlier. Um, there are so many people with very thick accents, but as long as you can communicate the message you want to communicate, that's good enough. You don't need any better English. You already speak two languages, so be very patient with yourself.
I totally 100% relate with you. I mean,
Same.
just look at my super um, perfect, fluent, and no accent
I just hear perfection. If you
English.
ask me, I just hear perfection.
Great advice. Great
Yeah,
advice.
it's.
That's me
I
with
mean,
Spanish.
I have. Yeah, I mean, we even joke sometimes that everybody speak Monica because
Yeah.
sometimes I taught English myself. I didn't go to school or anything for English. I learned English by myself, probably the same scenario as you, and I learned with the different jobs. But what I did is is I force myself, just like you're saying it. I force myself to work with people that didn't speak Spanish, so that way I
Mm,
could
yes.
learn. And I remember I used to go every single day to the library to read in English, watch movies in English with a dictionary next to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's how I learned English. And I mean, and look, we're in research. Here we are,
Yeah.
right?
Talking the one language, yeah.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
And me
So
too. Like I have second generation Mexicana, and my I understand 100% everything in Spanish. I can speak Spanish, but for the most part, I just get extremely nervous and I stonewall myself. I There's even an old recording that we first started with LICR where we were having a conversation and I just like live, I went completely blank. And it just, and this it happens, but
yeah, it's
100%
just a
agree.
matter of or letting go that wall, because that at the end of the day is your own wall. It's
Yes.
nobody else is
Absolutely.
creating it.
Yes.
And in
No one
fact, I
cares.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, and in fact, I think we actually even love that part when somebody's making the effort. It just even it makes it more beautiful, and you see, okay, they are actually trying their best to speak in whatever language it is, right? If you're
Yeah.
speaking, I don't know, like that Romanian, and then
He speaks
trying to
Spanish.
speak in English, or trying to speak Spanish, or in any language, I think that act of being brave makes it even more appealing. I mean, that's what I think. I don't know if I'm just
Oh, I
giving
agree.
myself.
I agree.
No,
Unless only when it's
I
me, I don't
agree.
want to.
But I think I mean, that's great, right? And and having the possibility that you're actually breaking into a different wall, into a different industry, into a different anything, is an act of being super brave,
Yeah.
and that always have good results. So it might cost sometimes, or make it more difficult, but if you keep going, if you keep pushing, it's going to happen. So everybody out there that is listening, that is looking for a job, or that is one, or that wants to go into a different country, you
Hmm.
hear it here. Go and do your cover letter. Go and work on the
Resume, LinkedIn.
on your LinkedIn resume, and obviously make sure that you're, like Cindy was saying, work on the interview very much. It is the channel lady will say, the impossible is saying I am possible. So
Hmm. And
it is always possible.
100%. And before we wrap it up, I mean, this conversation could definitely keep going, but I did want to mention, uh, and if you've already seen on our post that we announced it this week. Me, Judy, Monica, and Dan and Chris, right? We're all part of LICR. We are officially alliancing and connecting with Save Our Sites conference. This is again for the focus of, you know, doing the grassroots approach, making sure that we're making actual change in the industry. LICR has been really trying hard to collaborate and doing back end conversations to not just to get a sponsor and promote somebody, but to actually partner and be in a space that allows us to bring in change and talk about the high level discussions that need to be had about diversity and SOS. We are planning very much to have diversity discussions, and it's not just the basic tokenization, diversity aspect. We're talking about actual patient population, how this works in regards to hiring, how it goes in patient recruitment and all these other kinds of things. And we want very much for you guys to be a part of it, because if LICR is going to be partnering, we want to make sure that our members are very much heard and attend and make sure their voices are being included in the discussion. So if you have not already, please go follow saveoursites.com. The link and the attachment is there on our LinkedIn page, and go show some support, please. We very much would appreciate it. And we'll definitely be coming on here again, talking specifically about that to give a lot more information to you guys very shortly. But Cindy, thank you so
Yes.
much. It's
Thank
been
you.
amazing hearing your story. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. We do ask that you wait a little bit. We'd like to talk to you, after we close today. But
Yeah.
thank you everybody for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Hmm.
support. If you have not already, go find her on LinkedIn. We will have her link as well once this is posted. And network, right? It's always good
Yeah.
to network,
Hmm.
regardless of your background.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Cindy, for
much.
sharing your story and for inspiring many people. I know that this webinar, this video is gonna be of service for many people that maybe have that intention to apply and they haven't had the I mean the that they haven't made the decision just yet. So thank you so much. Shout out to Karina and
And Rama.
Rama.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
Yeah, thank
thank
You can watch
you.
you.
the
Thank
Thank
recording.
you.
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.